A global beverage titan recently dropped $195 billion to acquire a trendy gut health soda brand. Right now, millions are spending $30 a week on these pastel-colored cans, believing they are buying vitality and healing their microbiomes. But recent consumer fraud lawsuits reveal a devastating scientific injustice. The so-called living probiotics inside many of these commercial cans are effectively dead long before they reach your lips, destroyed by mandatory pasteurization. You are paying premium prices for a sterilized illusion. Meanwhile, sitting on your kitchen counter, a $3 piece of ordinary ginger and some raw sugar hold the blueprint for a fierce, living ecosystem. Through a forgotten wild fermentation process, these three basic ingredients generate billions of actual, active microbes and multiply the bioavailability of potent anti-inflammatory compounds. Why does the food industry want you desperately dependent on their expensive dead liquids, rather than a dirt-cheap living remedy you can easily brew yourself? By the end of this video, you will discover why a simple $2 root holds a medicinal compound heavily marketed for $55 in luxury capsules, and exactly who is trying to hide this forgotten kitchen science. Let's decode the billion-dollar prebiotic illusion. The global dietary supplement and wellness beverage market has exploded into a $177 billion behemoth. At the heart of this financial empire is a sudden, overwhelming cultural obsession with gut health. Modern supermarket aisles are heavily saturated with aesthetically pleasing cans of prebiotic and probiotic sodas, all promising to heal digestion, balance the microbiome, and provide a daily dose of vitality. Consumers are eagerly paying upwards of $3 to $4 per can, which translates to a substantial, recurring monthly financial drain. The marketing narrative is so persuasive that massive conglomerates are aggressively buying in, most notably evidenced by a staggering $195 billion acquisition of a leading prebiotic soda brand by an international beverage titan. However, when we look past the slick typography and the aggressive influencer marketing campaigns, a starkly different scientific reality emerges. The commercial wellness industry is heavily reliant on a strategy known as health washing. Recent class action lawsuits against several prominent beverage brands have begun to systematically dismantle this billion-dollar illusion. Independent laboratory tests and legal filings have repeatedly exposed a fatal flaw in these mass-produced formulations: the commercial manufacturing process itself. To mass-produce a biological beverage and ensure it can sit on a warehouse shelf for 12 months without altering its flavor profile or exploding from pressure, food corporations must subject the liquid to intense pasteurization. This extreme heat treatment brutally eradicates the fragile living microorganisms that the product claims to deliver. When an individual drinks one of these commercial gut health sodas, they are not ingesting a thriving, dynamic bacterial ecosystem. From a strict biological standpoint, they are swallowing a microbial graveyard. The beneficial bacteria are dead long before the can is even open. To compensate for this lack of living biology, manufacturers artificially pump these dead liquids with isolated synthetic fibers, such as highly processed inulin. While technically a prebiotic, this sudden influx of isolated fiber in a sterile environment often causes severe bloating, gas, and digestive distress, the exact symptoms the consumer is paying top dollar to cure. The industry is effectively selling a sterile ghost of a biological process, cleverly packaged in aluminum and marketed as a modern health miracle. You are funding an illusion. Why are we so blindly willing to trust a heavily processed, sterile factory product to heal our complex biology, while completely ignoring the living, wildly effective solutions that have existed right in front of us? The fundamental disconnect in the modern supplement and wellness beverage industry lies in a severe, highly profitable misunderstanding of human biology. Corporate laboratories operate under the deeply flawed assumption that human health can be reduced to isolated, sterilized chemical equations. Their manufacturing model is simple: extract a single bacterial strain, isolate a specific dietary fiber, force them into a sterile aluminum can or a synthetic capsule, and aggressively market it as a biological breakthrough. However, the human digestive tract does not efficiently recognize or process these isolated chemical fragments. Human biology is evolutionarily programmed to extract nutrition from a living food matrix. a highly complex, interdependent network of whole food structures, active enzymes, and living microorganisms functioning in perfect synergy. When a consumer drinks a mass-produced prebiotic soda or swallows a $55 bottle of encapsulated herbal extracts, they are merely ingesting fragmented isolates. Without the active living enzymes and the cellular breakdown provided by a natural biological process, the gastrointestinal system struggles to absorb the active compounds. Clinical literature consistently demonstrates that consuming raw or heavily processed dried herbal extracts yields a shockingly low absorption rate. For example, the human body typically absorbs a mere 5 to 10% of the vital polyphenols from raw or dried ginger. The remaining 90% is simply flushed through the digestive system, effectively rendering that premium price capsule biologically useless. The stark reality is that you cannot can or encapsulate a dynamic biological process and expect it to survive. This scientific limitation is precisely where the profound mechanics of wild fermentation completely dismantle the commercial supplement model. Consider the traditional ginger bug, a wild fermented starter culture engineered from nothing more than raw, unpeeled ginger root, unrefined sugar, and water. This is not a static culinary recipe. It is the deliberate cultivation of a fierce, living biological matrix. The rough, earthy skin of raw ginger naturally harbors highly diverse colonies of wild environmental yeasts and lactic acid-producing bacteria, predominantly from the Lactobacillus family. When submerged in water and provided with a simple carbohydrate food source, these dormant microorganisms awaken and initiate a remarkable molecular transformation. As wild fermentation takes hold, these microscopic workers begin to physically dismantle the tough, fibrous cell walls of the ginger root. This crucial predigestion process fundamentally alters the molecular architecture of the plant. It liberates the tightly bound polyphenols, specifically targeting potent anti-inflammatory and digestive compounds known as gingerols. Even more fascinating is the chemical conversion that occurs. The fermentation process actively transforms a portion of these gingerols into shogalls. Scientific studies indicate that shogalls are exponentially more bioavailable and possess significantly stronger antioxidant and neuroprotective properties than their unfermented counterparts. The empirical data surrounding this biological alchemy is staggering. Research confirms that the fermentation process can catapult the bioavailability and cellular absorption of these critical plant polyphenols to over 40%. This biological mathematical truth means that a microscopic $2 piece of wild fermented ginger delivers vastly more active, tissue-healing compounds to your bloodstream than a $55 bottle of industrially processed dry herbal pills. Simultaneously, this living liquid matrix is teeming with billions of actively replicating probiotic strains that produce beneficial organic acids, naturally lowering the gut's pH and creating an inhospitable environment for pathogenic pathogens. The commercial industry is fully aware of this science, yet they attempt to mimic this profound biological synergy with pasteurized dead bacteria and synthetic fibers, charging a massive premium for a biologically inferior replica. If a completely natural, inexpensive process can unlock more medicinal value than a state-of-the-art laboratory, why have we been so easily convinced to abandon it? Long before neon-lit supermarket aisles and billion-dollar beverage conglomerates dictated our nutritional choices, human survival depended on a profound, localized relationship with microbial life. For centuries, across vast geographical divides, traditional cultures universally harnessed the biological power of wild fermentation. In the bustling apothecaries of 18th and 19th century Europe, and deeply rooted in the ancient medicinal practices of Asia, the ginger bug was never considered a mere culinary novelty. It was a foundational, highly respected medicinal tool. Historically, true ginger ale was a far cry from the cloyingly sweet, artificially flavored, and carbonated syrup we recognize today. It was a potent, naturally effervescent healing elixir. Village herbalists and household healers relied on the actively fermenting ginger matrix to treat severe gastrointestinal distress, combat localized inflammation, and fortify the human immune system against seasonal pathogens. The creation of a ginger bug was an essential household skill, passed down through generations, ensuring that families had constant access to a living, biological pharmacy right on their kitchen counters. The knowledge of how to cultivate these microbes was as vital as knowing how to build a fire. So how did such a critical piece of human survival knowledge vanish so completely from our modern collective memory? The erasure was not an accident. It was a highly profitable byproduct of industrialization. With the aggressive dawn of the 20th century came the mass commercialization of the global food supply. The widespread adoption of the household refrigerator in the food industry's relentless pursuit of infinite shelf life fundamentally severed our historical relationship with living foods. To manufacture beverages on a massive global scale, corporations required absolute uniformity and stability. A living, bubbling jar of actively fermenting ginger cannot be easily standardized, boxed and shipped across the ocean without the pressure causing the container to explode. The inherent biological volatility that made the ginger bug so medicinally powerful was the exact trait that made it completely unviable for corporate profit models. Consequently, the food industry began a subtle but systematic campaign to vilify wild bacteria. They heavily promoted pasteurization and chemical sterilization, not just as occasional safety measures, but as the only acceptable standard for civilized modern consumption. Consumers were slowly conditioned to fear the very microbial processes that had actively sustained their ancestors' immune systems for millennia. We willingly traded a powerful, self-sustaining biological skill for the sterile, expensive convenience of a pop-top aluminum can. When an entire society trades ancient medicinal independence for industrialized convenience, what else have we surrendered to corporate interests without even realizing it? Reclaiming your biological autonomy does not require a sterile laboratory or an advanced medical degree. It demands a quiet, deliberate rebellion that takes place right on your kitchen counter. It requires you to confront and aggressively dismantle the deep-seated fear of wild bacteria that the commercial food industry has spent decades drilling into your psyche. Creating a traditional ginger bug is the ultimate act of nutritional defiance. You are systematically building a prolific, living ecosystem using just 3 humble ingredients in the ambient air in your home. To begin this process, you must first secure a clean glass jar. Plastic is inherently porous and can easily harbor unwanted competing bacteria, so inert glass is a non-negotiable standard. The second absolute requirement is pure, filtered, non-chlorinated water. Municipal tap water is intentionally treated with chlorine and chloramine specifically to assassinate microbial life. If you introduce tap water into your jar, you will instantly execute your wild yeast before the fermentation sequence can even commence. The foundational element of this biological matrix is raw, organic ginger. Crucially, you must completely ignore modern culinary habits and leave the rough, earthy skin entirely intact. The skin is not a waste product. It is the vital transport vehicle for the specific wild yeasts and lactobacillus bacteria necessary for the culture to thrive. Peeling the root violently strips away the very biological blueprint you are attempting to cultivate. The final ingredient is raw, unrefined cane sugar. Here is where the greatest modern nutritional misconception lies. In the strict context of wild fermentation, sugar is not a dietary villain or a sweetening agent for your palate. It is the critical, non-negotiable metabolic fuel for your microscopic workforce. As the bacteria and yeast rapidly multiply, they aggressively consume these sucrose molecules, actively converting them into lactic acid, beneficial organic acids, and carbon dioxide. The sugar is entirely sacrificed by the microbes so the medicine can be born. The physical procedure is deceptively simple. On the first day, you chop roughly 2 tablespoons of the unpeeled ginger, combine it with 2 tablespoons of the raw sugar, and submerge it in 2 cups of the filtered water. You must stir this mixture vigorously. This mechanical agitation is not just mixing. It is forcefully pulling atmospheric oxygen into the liquid, oxygenating the environment to trigger the initial aerobic growth phase of the yeast. For the next 3 to 5 days, you are no longer just preparing food. You are cultivating biological life. Every 24 hours, you must feed your matrix with 1 additional tablespoon of chopped ginger and 1 tablespoon of sugar, followed by another aggressive stir to disrupt the surface. By the 4th or 5th day, a profound biological shift occurs. The previously clear liquid transforms into a highly active, cloudy suspension. A distinct, sharply tart, and pleasantly yeasty aroma will begin to drift from the jar. Then the undeniable visual proof of respiration emerges, a persistent, effervescent layer of tiny carbon dioxide bubbles forming at the surface and clinging to the floating botanical pieces. We have been heavily conditioned by the commercial food sector to view any spontaneous bubbling in room temperature liquids as a dangerous biohazard, a sign of rot. But this is not decomposition. This is the spontaneous generation of a hyper-bioavailable medicinal ecosystem, actively breaking down cellular walls and multiplying its probiotic count into the billions. If a simple glass jar and a few days of patience can engineer a stronger, living digestive remedy than a multi-billion-dollar manufacturing facility, are you willing to unlearn a lifetime of corporate programming to finally trust the biology of your own kitchen? Embracing the kitchen rebellion does not mean abandoning scientific caution. Wild fermentation is a raw, untamed biological process, and nature demands absolute respect. The line between a potent medicinal matrix and a compromised, spoiled liquid is drawn by your commitment to hygiene and observation. You must learn to read your microbiome. A thin, powdery white film on the surface of your ginger bug is often just calm yeast, a harmless, naturally occurring byproduct of the fermentation process. However, the appearance of fuzzy, brightly colored, or black mold is an immediate biological red flag, indicating that rogue environmental pathogens have hijacked your ecosystem, and the entire batch must be discarded without hesitation. Furthermore, we must acknowledge that we are brewing real, bioavailable medicine, which comes with legitimate physiological impacts. Because the fermentation process exponentially amplifies the active compounds in ginger, its natural blood-thinning properties become significantly more potent. Individuals currently taking prescription anticoagulant medications must rigorously consult a medical professional before introducing this living liquid into their daily regimen. Additionally, all wild fermentation naturally produces trace amounts of ethanol as a metabolic byproduct. While this typically remains well below 1%, similar to the alcohol content found in an overripe banana, it is a chemical reality of the biological process that must be noted. When you master these simple scientific boundaries, the financial and biological return on investment is absolutely unparalleled. You are trading a one-time $3 purchase of root and sugar for a self-sustaining, microscopic factory that will generate billions of living probiotics indefinitely. Meanwhile, the commercial consumer will continue to spend thousands of dollars a year on aggressively marketed, sterilized aluminum cans. Are you willing to learn the simple, profound rules of biological science? Or will you continue to pay a massive premium for a corporation to manage your health with dead liquids? The $177 billion supplement and wellness industry has successfully monetized our natural desire for health by selling us the ultimate modern illusion: convenience. They have quietly convinced millions that healing must arrive inside a shrink-wrapped package, formulated in a sterile laboratory, and purchased at a premium price. But true biological resilience cannot be pasteurized, patented, or packed into a dead aluminum can. It is a living, breathing relationship with a microbial world, and it is cultivated right on your own kitchen counter. By choosing to chop a raw piece of ginger, submerge it in water, and feed it sugar, you are doing much more than merely preparing a beverage. You are actively participating in a forgotten human tradition. You are reviving an ancient microbial alliance that reliably sustained our ancestors' immune systems for centuries before the advent of industrial food processing. Most importantly, you are taking your physiological autonomy back from massive corporations that profit immensely from your biological ignorance. It is time to start questioning the slick marketing campaigns and the billion-dollar beverage buyouts. Look past the expensive price tags and begin to respect the profound, quiet science of wild fermentation. Have you ever tried cultivating your own ginger bug? Or are you ready to start your first kitchen rebellion this week? Share your thoughts, fears, and fermentation journeys in the comments below. If you want to continue decoding the lucrative secrets of the modern health industry and rediscovering the forgotten science of traditional remedies, make sure to subscribe. Stop paying for sterile illusions and start brewing real life.